Thank you all for being part of our future. 2022. This has been such an incredible year. I mean, from the surprise Jane Goodall message through John D. Liu's project that he just felt like resonated and he wanted to share with us, to the panels where we're just having people just explain like how we're literally going to be able, we're going to have options. There's not one course, but there's many options. And it's a big, wide open field that we all can participate in. I'm down here in Texas, and I'm thinking more and more about the Gulf and the kind of work that Neil Speckman talked about that's needed to reverse the dead zones. And I get so excited. I've noticed that, there's comments, folks are like, I want to draw this, I want to paint this, I want to make this visual for people, I want to write the stories of this, I want to be the person that does this, I want to be the person that goes with them and learns from them. All of the above. So it's just wonderful to see the enthusiasm growing, to see that we have these channels for expression, for growth through regeneration. And to not only see that we can get back to a place before fossil fuel usage, but not only that, we can go much deeper in sequestration when we're partnering with nature. In fact, it's the animals, it's the forests, it's the grasslands, it's the soils, it's the ocean kelp forests, it's the coral reefs, it's the fish, it's the microbes, all of it's missing. And that's where the carbon is. That's why there's excess nutrients here. And that's why, all these different things. And as we heard about, where did the oil originally come from? It's like, well, the deposits, along a certain geographical area were all from Azola, all up by the North Pole and in the Arctic. And suddenly we realized that this is a longer term cycle. And we've simply bottlenecked it in the atmosphere. We've simply removed it from the other areas where it's properly cycled, other areas where it's used as an energy sink and reservoir for our soil and our plants and the life in the soil, right? So we really have to reconnect these things because it's the battery of life. That's one of the things that I discovered in writing. Wait for it. In writing Regenerative Soil, was that the soil, when we talk about oxidized soil, when we talk about losing carbon, we're talking about losing energy, actually. We're talking about losing like actual electrons. And so we can measure the health of the soil from a redox perspective, but you can also link that directly to observations and correlations with other tests. And you can get at a lot of this information just by understanding what it means. All right. So, and that's really what that book is. That book's like a cipher. You go through and you figure out what's going on with your soil in your part of the world. And then I'm still letting people in. and then you pick and choose your course of action, given your resources, your bioregion, what you prefer, and what would be best for what you're doing. You may be farming and then there's acreage calculations in there, but you may be doing a backyard garden and the recipes and numbers and everything are down to that level too. So it doesn't matter what level you're starting. You may be making compost and putting in pots. You may be, going by thousands of acres at a time. Either way, I really wanted to make sure that people had the understanding and the recipes to implement healing soil protocols and then proper management so that their soil will get better and better every year. And that's what Elaine Ingham started me on years ago when we wrote that book, that chapter really in this book. Well, I wrote it based on reading tons of her stuff and some other folks' stuff, but primarily a lot of Elaine's. And then she corrected me a ton. And then over the years, I've added more to this. But it really started with her being like, Matt, you got this. You got this. And then over the course of time, her being like, hey, Matt, let's talk about the literature because I need help going through it because it's this ocean, as you've noticed. And I'm like, I've noticed that too. But you know, it's incredible to swim in that ocean of data and find the islands upon which others have visited. It was incredible to read, you know, the 80s and 90s like the papers that formed our original understanding, like some of the original things that Elaine would reference. It's like I found those articles and they're amazing and stunning. And as she talked about this time, you know, people are replicating it in different countries now to verify it. But that's what we do in science. We replicate things over and over again, because, you know, nature doesn't do, and Elaine said this too, last year at Our Future, she said nature doesn't do things one way. That's why she didn't know about rhizophagy. That's why, you know, she didn't understand, you know, effective microbes at first because it was anaerobic. And many of you remember when she was like, no anaerobes 5-10 years ago, right? So, but you heard this time, you know, and last year, if you were with us, that, you know, she knows exactly who's in the EM1, effective microbes, trademark, you know what I mean? That whole thing. And so it's really this development and growth that we're all part of. And, you know, I'm really excited about tomorrow. I haven't really mentioned this to anyone. Perhaps because I'm a little bit nervous. But tomorrow I'm going to be doing something that is going to be new for me. But luckily, my very good friend William Padilla Brown is traveling down here to help. He's done all this before, not the same exact protocol, but I'm going to be testing compost, just like, you know, Elaine Ingham talked about how she would send her compost out to get DNA testing sometimes, get those numbers back and try to understand it. But it's family level and then it's individual level. And there's these two different levels. I'm going to do that with a bunch of different composts, Johnson Sioux, Catalyst Bioamendments compost, which, you know, they're the top students from Dr. Elaine Ingham. And their compost is absolutely incredible. And it's a living library, as we've talked about this week. And so I'm going to be looking at what's in that. I'm going to sequence it. And if you know my work in regenerative soil, we do go down to the individual microbe for biofertilizers, for endophytes, because there's not an infinite number of microbes that live inside plants. There really isn't. And if you trace the traits, the genetic, the DNA abilities to do certain things like nitrogen fixation, especially in a liquid environment like in a compost tea. And this is why I'm going to also do compost teas and do all this. I want to test all these different stages of compost and show who is there when, because there are tests that have been done on compost. I'm going off on compost. But this is what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm starting this process of documenting who's really in the composts and who's there at which stages, who's there at the end of a compost tea, who's there at the beginning of a compost tea, who's there in a hot compost tea, like an immature pile, because it functionally could be something else. It could be a digestive agent, right? So you could take a hot compost pile, run some water through it passively, like maybe when you're turning it and stuff, just do a little bit extra water, and then take that water and use that water to jumpstart another pile, or to digest something that's needs a little bit of extra biological digestion. But it's clear from what we've seen, and remember that they haven't, in DNA testing in the past, like they focused on usually one thing. They're like, we're going to test the fungi. We're going to, you know, plate and we're going to isolate one fungi from this thing. And so the greatest thing you have is from a bunch of different composts from China, a study, and they did the bacteria. And so it's not the fungi, it's just the bacteria. And it kind of reinforces that whole thing where like, all the thermophiles are bacteria, like from the Humanure Handbook. Remember that? I love I love that Humanure Handbook, no doubt, a classic. But there's thermophilic fungi. So I want to know who's there at what level, and what's clear from this, just the bacteria level, is the endophytes are there at the beginning, which makes sense because it's just plant material and the microbes are still in the plant material that were living there. And then it turns into saprophytes. And I'm pretty sure what we're going to see is what we're doing is flipping, like successional, like flipping. We're going to saprophytes, and then they're going to be digested in context of the soil and inside the plant root by the plants, and then they're going to just kind of boost the situation for the plant and strengthen microbes that are already living there or endophytic. So that's what I suspect. But I'm going to get down there and we're going to look at it. We're going to show each stage because that's the thing, is we actually can know. We can categorically know if they're saprophytes or if they're endophytes. We can look at the individuals and see. And these things are pretty darn common. So like beer yeast was already living inside the plants, already there the whole time. So like they just were like letting the food ferment, and it naturally like turned into alcohol. So like this yeast is inside our corn, inside our, it is biofertilizer. So it fixes nitrogen and it makes the plant grow more. So there's these things that we can, I mean, they're really common. They're easy to work with. I mean, you guys have made bread, right? You're taking the bowl and you put the yeast in the, okay, you just created biofertilizer. You're one of the team now. Welcome. So this is the reality. We can work with individual microbes because of the breakthroughs and understanding that we have had in the last few years. And it's an incredible amount of reading. And that's why, you know, I've kind of been all like, you know, trapped in a room. I've read and read and read and read and read, and I got a few of the books here. And I've done some videos, you know, going through all the different data, like do all soils have everything? Does compost have everything? And there's reasons why we inoculate, you know, plant roots with nitrogen fixing rhizobia. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't like pop into out of the compost, like just like, here I am. It was the heat that did it. No. You need to add that. Elaine adds native fungi to her piles after they're done through the heating stage, because otherwise they're just going to cook that mycelium. So it doesn't, you got to add to it, right? And then if your substrates don't have every nutrient at the proper levels, you got to add it back in. And then also you can train your microbes too by adding things in. And so there's just an incredible amount that you can do nowadays, an incredible amount of things that you can identify. And that's actually what we're doing tomorrow, is I'm sequencing the DNA of 4 different compost samples, as well as a DIY biofertilizer that was started over 20 years ago from the original group of people who created EM in America and taught it to the first group in America. So it's from that original mother culture that's actually been kept alive. I know you'll hear you'll hear from people all that it's got to be just lactic acid bacteria at this point, but I've looked at it and it's got the yeast flakes. I want to compare them with the DNA testing to see if the purple non-sulfur bacteria is still there, right? So I'm going to do that. Because these are individuals that we know. These are individuals that have properties that we all value, and that we've all been, many of us have been learning about in recent years. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm starting a long journey that is going to turn into a compost and compost tea analysis book, where I'm going to show the results of the DNA testing down to the individual. That if I can fit it. I mean, if it's like 1 million, it might be harder. We'll see. We'll see what it's like. But you can always categorize it down to family and the percentage. You can do that, and that's very, 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 very powerful. Because if you have a readout like from Ward Laboratories, and it's like 99.9% brown rot saprophytic fungi and 0 arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, your roots aren't going to get anything that they like really need other than maybe slurping some of those microbes up and rhizophagy zapping them, making them, release their electrolytes and consuming most of them. That's the thing is unless the microbes can produce nitrogen, which makes them an endophyte, they're destroyed almost always. And so, yes, it's a fun ride for them to go in, maybe if they're endophytes, but most of these microbes are destroyed in the rhizophagy process. So again, this is another thing I want to do. I want to get plant roots that I've worked with for a while that have been feeding, and pull those out, juice, like sterilize the outside of the root, just the outside, lightly, but I don't want to confuse the outside with the inside. And then juice it. There's a bunch of different ways, and different people are working on different ways to do it. You got to have a juicy root or several roots, right? And then we're going to get that liquid, that root sap, and we're going to test that and show who's there. So that's another layer to this as well, because no one's taking the snapshots of the DNA of these things at their different stages and the different parts. People are documenting the action, and they can morphologically tell you who's who, but not individually. That's the problem with the microscopes, is they can morphologically tell you who's there, but I mean, stains are the way that they used to tell you individually who's there, like with the E. coli stains that Elaine talked about. And stains used to be harder to get, right? And that's why she was like, oh, I just didn't want to wait, for the lab to do it. So I started developing my own protocols. Stains now, I mean, all those lab techs with blue hair, that is like the #1 stain that people are using. It's methylene blue. So like, it's something that everyone is like, people put in their hair. People are saying it's like anti-aging for their skin. Like they're just going crazy with it. And like, that's what people are using to like stain roots like all the time. So we're in such a different day now. Amazon has so many of the things that you would use and rely upon. All right. Thank you so much for all being here. If you click down at the bottom, there's a button, a chat button, and there's also a reactions button where you can raise your hand. Feel free to use those functions. Let people know where you're zooming in from, where you're chatting in from, and let us know what your questions are. And but when you start, put question in all caps so that I can find you more easily. All right. So I really appreciated the feedback from the morning welcomes. A lot of that comes from this book I wrote called Unstoppable Enthusiasm. And that's on Amazon right now. Don't have any copies on my website right now, but that is kind of like the full reveal of how I run my routine and how I try ultimately to live my life. But, schedule sometimes, homeschooling, children, family, things change sometimes, and you don't always get your morning meditations in, but I try. And if anything, I get like a 10-20 minute meditation in after breakfast or something, even if I don't get it in first thing in the morning. So it is great to see people from Pennsylvania, Uruguay, New Hampshire. Love it. New Hampshire is wonderful. I went to school there. Minnesota, very cold there. Pennsylvania, London, Chicago. New Mexico, Australia, Hunter Valley. I see some questions here. Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm so glad you've liked this week. It's been so much fun to see so many of my friends. All right. California. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, let's start on your questions. Because I mean, I was thinking that if we didn't have any questions, I would just play with the microscope and we talk about microscopes and stuff. But here, I'll put this in the background. Oh no, not that one. It's a reach. Hold on. Oh dear. Hold on one second. All right, there we go. Should find itself now. Anticlimactic, Matt. It'll find itself. So anyway, I was just looking at a testate amoeba, and it really illustrates, you know, well, anyway, it illustrates a lot of the interplay between what's going on in universities. I think a lot of it with universities and the complex stains is because the grad students can't mess it up. It's literally counting with like, count all the red ones. And that's why Elaine could do it when she was 6. Like but it's stuff that you can literally learn to ID without it being bright orange or something like that. And that's what I kind of wanted to show you. Here we go. There we go. All right. See that right there is a testate amoeba. And it's pink and it's huge. It's massive. And it's like basically like a kite. It's got an opening on one end. So, I mean, and it lets out waste around from another area, but it's got like a big mouth and it catches things and has arms that come out and grab things and bring it back in. So it's amoeba with a shell, but it looks like a kite. My boys were working with kites earlier and I was thinking like, anyway, but like that would be like bright pink or purple or something, but you all can see that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Anyway, I like microscopes, but there's so many questions. I just wanted to show you that you guys really can use microscopes in an empowering way, even without stains, even without the ability to like flip it to epifluorescence, with which this microscope can do. Epifluorescence is actually probably closer to what they actually see. And that's why I was able to find things that like glowed in the dark. It's one of the ways that they're signaling. All right, question. I heard you speak elsewhere about planning to start a seed company, which involves specially pre-inoculated seeds with beneficial microbes. Right. I also have heard of indigenous practices where you put seeds in your mouth before planting them. If you are a healthy person, does this sound like a good way to inoculate seeds with some good microbes? I don't know. I've heard that. I've never heard it accredited to, cited to any indigenous peoples in particular. Like I've heard of people who felt like the seeds told them to do that, and they've spread that's what they teach, that the seeds talk to them. But I mean, imagine how many people and how many different diets there are. If everyone was eating the same kind of foods, because diets were more complex in some ways because of foraging, but in North America, you know what I mean, when they're like eating so much corn, it's like there was a similar microbiome biology perhaps, but there's such a great diversity that I wouldn't ever probably say that that's going to work. The one thing I am going to be working on, and this is further on down the road, revealing everything this is our future. But I'm planning on comparing the microbes that are in the plants and in our guts, and I suppose in our mouths as well, so we understand what's going on where and who's surviving, and the succession, who eats who. It's like, and then what is released when, you know what I mean? Like there's definitely much more to the story. And if we had much more control over our health, I think that we'd all be a lot happier. What is going on here? Calm down. The mouse was on the glass and trying to go everywhere at once. Anyway, I was an optical mouse. All right. So yeah, I'm going to be making this seed company, and I'm going to be having those seeds be living seeds. So they're pre-inoculated and coated with microbiology. And then I also want to send like a sample of good biology that you literally soak the seeds in. So instead of being like this large, compost company, I would like have this very select focused biology. And yeah, it would be focused on specific bio-fertilizers, so that they would be compatible for that area. So much of like what I've learned is that there are microbes that help the desert. There are microbes that are good for tropics. There are microbes that are good for the cold temperate, and they are different. They have names. In the fungal world, they're all about this. Bacteria, they're just so numerous that, and well, and so many of them have so many industrial uses that it's kind of all locked up more. It's less citizen science over there. But on the fungal side, it's so much citizen science happening. And as you guys have seen with Dr. James White, and often, Paul Stamets demonstrates this by opening his patents, the fungal side is myceliating. They want to connect. They want to find the answers. So yeah, I don't know about the whole thing. The thing is, it's like what I had heard was that someone was saying that they talked to the seed, and the seed told them if they sucked on them first before planting them, they would create the minerals that they were lacking and deficient in. And I mean, there's some logic there, maybe, but it doesn't translate quite right. So if you are maybe in your mouth, there's microbes that are there to digest things that you're lacking in, right? And then you're transferring them to the seed. And I feel like that's like a logic exercise rather than one that's proven out. But again, and then there's also the great variation involved. Let's go to the next one. Great question, Leanne. Thank you. Question. Currently, I'm working on a new project to start an eco-village here in Ethiopia. But my background is electrical engineering, so I'm new to the concept of permaculture, soil, mycology, green building, but I'm learning step by step. So my question is, what do you recommend me to focus on to begin with project? It could be books, specific field, courses. Yeah. I would focus on a action-oriented permaculture course that has a community that will connect you to people who are in Africa, people who have done work in Africa, and people who are living in Africa and African. That's what I highly recommend, because it's not just the universal education that permaculture does have. Oh yeah, we can help people everywhere with permaculture. But there's also the local connections. There's also the local history and culture, the indigenous patterns that are still often there, even if they've been disturbed, or there's an underlying pattern to the way things were run. And so I've always tried to do that in my course, the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. So I highly recommend you checking that out. But I don't want to just like, point myself out. I would say that more I gamble would be someone that could connect you to people on the ground. Natalie Topa, another speaker from this, who's supported my work and been in my courses throughout the years. She also is a great contact. I don't know if Morag has worked in Ethiopia, and I don't know. I know that she works in, I think, over 12 countries in Africa, Natalie Topa. So they're really good folks that are good connections to an even wider network in those areas. Our speaker, Yango Otieno Wyclef, is in Kenya, but he has lots of friends and knows lots of people in leadership roles and teacher roles throughout Africa. So these are friends. These are great people, great connections. So I would connect with them. Absolutely. All right. So that's what I would say. Great question. Do you know about the Kaveri Calling Project in India, supported by millions of people, or a community initiative motivated the national authorities to develop a framework to revitalize rivers, revive the soil, and increase farmers' incomes? This initiative helped farmers move towards the more sustainable practices. Agroforestry have planted more than 52 million trees, become a living example for the tropical world. And the new global movement launched by the Conscious Planet recently, Save the Soil. This is a very hopeful vision for the world. Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Thank you, Kinga. Okay, next question. Where is the best place to start with permaculture at home when sometimes it feels like it's too much to understand fully? I want to teach myself as well as my 4 children about permaculture. Okay, Amy, I've got a program called the Permaculture Student Online K through 12, and I also have permaculture gardening. Permaculture gardening is actually the bonus course for the $99 physical goodie bag, digital goodie bag, full package extravaganza. That's a great course. That you could do that with your kids, permaculture gardening, or you could do the K through 12 course with your kids. That's at a reduced price. It used to be like $250 or $350. It's now $150. It's 16 weeks. There's over an 180-page workbook. There's 3 levels: elementary, middle school, and high school. Lesson plans and questions. I've set it, I have different levels. And so whenever I really want to learn something, I teach it. And to prepare for teaching it, I really have to learn it well. Like, I have to become fluent at it. But if I'm doing it for my kids or for my students, I learn things at like a totally different level. And so, we're parents, right? When you put things like that, sometimes it really can help. So yeah, I think that's the best way. And also another reason why it's like the best way is because it's food and seed based. So they cook with the food and the seeds. There's recipes that are involved with everything. There's cooking with eggs. There's talk about, working with chickens and goats. And then there's seed saving. So it's all hands on. There's critical thinking. There's coloring. It covers everything. So yeah, I would check that out. I think you'll love it. And the reality is that course was based on my understanding and adaptation of Jeff Lawton's PDC, official standard PDC, top in the world, right? At the time in 2014. And I asked his permission to do so. I created my book, The Permaculture Student 1, based on it. And that's why he had it translated into Arabic so that he could print it off. He has print rights towards that. So they can print it off and use it in his Arabic PDCs, which he has for 7 years now. So yeah, I really value it. That's where I started it, essentially, right? That's like me. I got the information from Jeff. I digested it and then explained it to my kids. And then my understanding increased as I explained it and taught my kids. And then I did more research and started going through all the citations and Bill Mollison's work and finding how out of date they are, or out of print they were, and then updating that bit by bit. This is why it took years for the Italian version of the Permaculture Designer's Manual. Lisa Mollison had to work extensively with the translators. I know it. It took me over 2 years to do it myself with over 20 different peer reviewers. So it's really vital to do that work, but it's a process, you know, and that's why the Advanced Permaculture Student Online, which is, you know, based on this big book, is lifetime access and self-paced. And we do have 10 months of live, and they're themed. You can ask a question whenever about anything. Very relaxed community, much like this, right? We're all just hanging out, asking questions. And I highly recommend it because it's the first K through 12 program ever created for permaculture, that program. And then it connects right to the Advanced Permaculture Student Online, which though was created for adults in college, I wrote in the language of high school, because I'm a high school teacher. And that's the language we all read in the newspaper. You know what I mean? Like 10th grade English is literally the like New York Times reading level. So it's all stuff that we all can do. And that's what I wrote it in, to make it easy so that we could facilitate this and have this go out. And that's the reason why, well, I also linked it to standards, that all the next generation science standards, the national science education standards, and the permaculture education standards, so that teachers could actually use it. Without standards, teachers can't use things. They need it for alignment, for objective, and for their objectives and their assessments. They need all of that to actually be able to teach properly. Otherwise, otherwise they're flying blind. So I created all of that. So that's the reason it became accredited. No one, there just hadn't been, you know, someone who was a teacher who got involved in permaculture up until this point, is what I saw. So a professional teacher, someone who comes from that world of professional education and like standards, you know. So that's why I created all that. That's why my curriculum is the way it is. And that's why I also teach the way I teach, because I want people to succeed, and also want it to be appealing, so that if they had it in a school, you know, near you, all the kids would take it. And in British Columbia right now, high schoolers can get triple science elective credit to get their PDC in high school. So they can get certified, get triple science credit, 3 years of science elective credit. Yeah, so it's pretty incredible. I'm very excited about that. And I didn't do it. Someone else facilitated all that and made that all happen. I didn't petition or talk to anyone, or they notified me. And that's the world we're going to be living in, you guys. We're going to get notifications. We're going to get messages that, you know, John Metcalf has completely changed the Florida coast, or that, you know, Vanessa has gone and reforested most of Oregon, or that Alan Booker, I see you, Alan, has changed engineering altogether and created a new ethical framework for engineers to look through. This is what's going to happen. We're getting notifications. We're just going to, like this week. You guys saw how surprised and I knew that he had these things, Neil. You know what I mean? He's had so many things in his back pocket. He's like, I don't know which to reveal, Matt. I'm like, it's like, anything you reveal, Neil, will be amazing. You know, he's like, well, we're in many countries at this point. It's like, just tell us. But that's the thing, is it's gonna, he wants it to be like the Alberta project, where it comes off like just like a sea change, a showstopper. Neil loves that. Yeah, I know, you can tell he's got a flair of the dramatic there. I love that man. All right. So question, what are your thoughts on seed-based currency? Wealth defined as how well you can support self neighbor, and environment for years to come. Multifaceted approach to self-sufficiency and regeneration. I think that we're switching to that currently. I think that's what's happening right now. I think that you're part of it. We're part of it. I started giving away seeds 10 years ago to my students and their families. I would give away seeds to hundreds of families every single year. And people would save seeds because I would teach that part-time in my English class in my high school. I sometimes would get letters and have parent teacher meetings about things like this. But people recognize that seeds are the original wealth. I remember James talking about that when he was 6 or 7, being like, Dad, these are going to be money. And I think that's kind of like, we all know it's gold, it's seeds, it's, apparently ammo. But there are these things that people are hoarding right now, and it's very hard to get them. So I'm not saying that I have gold. I don't have any gold. Got a microscope. And maybe we have gold chelators like the Johnson's. We've got Johnson Sioux sample compost here that we're going to be testing. And when he did his in New Mexico, he had gold digesters, solubilizing gold, the most stable element on the periodic table. Right? I mean, what is going on there? So very, very interesting stuff. Question: have you ever looked into Victor Schauberger's work in conditioning water to get support soil biology, plant life, including spiral vortices and pipes, nozzles, etc.? Yeah, so that's all about inducing fourth phase water. That's all about inducing fourth phase water. So it's movement and surface area and vortexing, right? There's been some studies that the vortices that people are using for some of these systems kill microbes, and guys smashing them or just kind of like spinning them too hard. There is evidence that non-aerated still compost water has benefits. It's all about being able to catch it at the right moment and knowing who's who. Yeah, and so there's a lot to this. There's people who are doing smaller bubbles, slower aeration to get different effects, specifically for cannabis, referring to Organics Alive. There are people that are just doing extracts. Elaine Ingham has shifted that to this as a major focus in the recent years. Extracts, just running water through the compost for a little bit and then getting that straight out. So not aerating for 72 hours, extracts. So there's a lot to this. But to just backtrack to your question, yeah, so conditioning water, like if we're thinking about creating more fourth phase water, there's a bunch of ways that we can do it. We talk about this in regenerative soil, but adding surface area to the mix, adding rock dust, adding even biochar dust can work, but adding surface area can really make things get amplified. But what they're doing is getting things to form essentially this organized field, and this organized field acts as a purification event. And you see this all the time, is gel water. It's the difference between charges. It's why a water droplet that falls from the sky can skip and stay a droplet over water on the ground. You probably have seen this in your life. it skitter across and doesn't incorporate at first because they're charged differently. So you're really trying to just organize the charges, and you've seen this before when you're sharpening your knife, right? You go one way and then the other way, one way and then the other way. And you don't even need to do it with something that's like taking off metal. Remember, you've seen stone. People do this with stone plates. I've seen Ava Arvas do this one late night at MicroFest. She just, or it was the morning after, sorry. She just used the plate, and you're organizing the direction of things. So this is playing out all the time, everywhere. Right. Yeah. And so fractalwater.com, Gavin, let's prove it. Let's see it. I want to know it. I want to know that it actually works and they're not fooling people. You know, I want to make sure. So the thing is, in the wave of enthusiasm, because you guys have seen it. Is there stuff to be enthusiastic about? Heck yeah. Right. There's tons of stuff to be enthusiastic about. Do people get carried away? Yeah. Yeah. And well-meaning people and then some well-not-meaning people. You know, I mean, like every new industry has, you know, hucksters, and people show up to just take advantage. I mean, you've probably seen certain like group barons, you know, in Facebook that are like this. And so I really, that's why I try to be so transparent with my work. That's why I also try to like maintain my spot as a teacher and hold to like that. Because yeah, there's so much that's going on in this online space that's unhealthy. And it's really critical that we do things to maintain integrity and show transparency and take feedback so that you don't fool yourself. You know, I was teaching this book, you know, and I didn't really understand any of the stuff that John Kemp was doing, Olivia Husson was doing, James White was doing. I didn't really understand the depths of what Chris Trump was doing, what Master Cho were doing, Korean natural farming, right, based on the indigenous farming techniques of the Japanese, which was a knowledge bomb for me recently, reading that the updated new edition of Master Cho's book, where he showcases the indigenous Japanese farmers, which he actually learned everything from, and combined their techniques to create his natural farming. Yeah, all these folks, I didn't understand it until I started going through all the chemistry and instead of being afraid of it, faced my fears and started the long, steady process of learning it all. But in order to understand it fully, I had to make it visual and I had to make it communicatable to my sons. You know, that's part of what I do. And so that's what that book really is. It's something that allows people to connect the biological world that, you know, Elaine Ingham, you know, has like so many awesome protocols for looking at through the microscope, as well as with the DNA world and the genetic discoveries that we have, as well as with the soil remediation world, which works with many individual microbes doing incredible things to heal our planet, as well as the fungal microbiological world, as well as the endophytic world inside the plant. So as the plant, like I combined it all. The chemistry world met the biological world down at the ion, enzymatic, and the microbiological level. So that's where I had to go down to really connect that all. But that's what I did with that book, and changed everything for me. All right. Next question. I see Pascal Baudeur. All right. Question. Do we know as how some plants do not like certain microbes? Are there certain microbes that do not like certain plants? Are there fungal fixers? Interesting. Well, let's flip it. There are mycorrhizal plants. There are some plants that die and won't grow without a mycorrhizal partner. Orchids being one of those. That's why in the orchid industry, they've understood inoculation of with fungi for a very long time. So yeah, non-mycorrhizal plants. Okay, prepare yourself. Non-mycorrhizal plants are the things that grow most easily on my original permaculture site in California in that oxidized alkaline soil. Because they're actinobacterial, actinomycetes is the old name before the DNA genetic information came in to talk to us about that. Oh, my slide's drying out. Sorry, buddy. Let me move that really quick. And then let's just switch to, let's look at it. Woo, look at that beauty. That's fungi. Yeah, the fungal actions shows up. This is why plants are able to communicate, because they're literally using signals. This is the frequency, not the frequency. This is the wavelength at which these microbes are seeing. This is why like nematodes and worms have glow-in-the-dark patterns at this frequency. Why are they able to find these roots? Why are they able to find these things that are going on? They glow at the certain frequency that thing sees. Things are hunting at certain wavelengths. Things are doing things at, certain wavelengths. They're communicating to mates, right? That's why I can't pull it up right now. Well, I could. If we run out of questions, I have some crazy things to show you. But like they're definitely communicating, just like snakes have patterns and there's males and females. That's happening down there too. And I've seen it. And so I really want to genetically ID these things, because I know, despite it being 20,000, that I'm going to look up individuals' names with it's like Control F, right? We're going to keyword search this thing. That's what we do. And then we look at the amounts and percentages by family and individual. So I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be mapping these things out at a completely new level. I mean, you heard Elaine. It's like they send this stuff out to a lab every once in a while because it's expensive. I've got the equipment. And in fact, I've got the best equipment out there now. It's absolutely incredible. It's a 1-to-1. You're not doing PCR amplifying it, potentially causing mutations and mistakes, right? That's the whole reason why they're sunsetting PCR right now, because people are being like, hey, this amplifies certain things, right? Not going to get into specifics on that, but for our purposes, it's just a truer reading. It's a truer reading. It's giving you more accurate information. So I'm going to be doing that. So the rest of your question, though, is, are things we can plant to encourage boom or bust in certain microbes to prepare a bed for a crop with certain needs? Yes, 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 yes. There are certain things that you can plant, but even more so, there are certain things that you can add. So it's like, let's say you want it to be a perennial patch. You're not going to grow little trees there to chop and drop. That'd be a nightmare. You're going to get the woody biomass somewhere else, right? You're going to get the wood chips or the ramial wood chips, which are superb, the best. And then you're going to be like adding those, right? You're not going to be growing a cover crop of woody somethings, right? So it really kind of depends on your context. But great question. Let's move this a little bit. Actually, let me sharpen that image slightly. Oh, it's so beautiful. So those lines are, oh man, do you see that red dot there? Man, the colors are just so fascinating. Let's go to another area though. Yeah, there's all this fungi all over the place. All right, I'm coming back to questions. Sorry, I get distracted easily when there's a microscope or a guitar. Um, so question, what is your favorite book on permaculture or just gardening? So, all right, so it really depends on what we're talking about. So when it comes to which book I use the most, I use my own book because I designed it to be my mind. Like I literally wrote down everything I knew and understood. Then I brought it to the smartest people I could in the world and then said, what am I missing? What do I not understand? And they corrected it. And in doing so, they like corrected my mind. And then I've done that over and over again. I know this is the third official edition, but privately, it's the sixth edition since it was first published. And there was an entire 6-month period where I was delaying its release initially because my peer reviewers kept saying, you need to read this, you need to read that. And so I did. And that's why I was, you know, I'm so close to these people, I think, in many ways, because they've set me on these mountains to climb. Said, get climbing, go, Matt, go. And I climbed the mountain. John Kemp is one of those folks. He's always feeding me books, and he's like, Mikey will eat it, right? Maddie will eat it. Remember Mikey commercials? Anyway, dating myself. And so it's because I've come back to him and been like, John, this is incredible, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yes, you did read, you know, and this has just been what I've, you know, done for years. So I really like using my book as the main permaculture book. Like I'm always using my own book. Same thing with soil. I always use my regenerative soil book because it's literally my shorthand for all the reference library. So I've got these several libraries of books, and I rotate them depending on which subject I'm focusing on because I can't keep them all out. I keep them partially in storage. And this is someone who had an entire homeschool the library. I had an entire bookstore give me their inventory. This happened at one point. We had an entire antique store auction off their inventory that we jumped in on like 12 years ago too at one point. So we have like little like vintage Snoopy like spoons and stuff when we eat. Anyway, too much of a reveal, Matt. But yeah, no, I love all this stuff. I really need a reference though to go through it all, because what'll happen is I'll get to like ponds and I'll be like, I'll refer to my book. And then if I need to go deeper, I go into the NRCS pond building resource, which is I think a 45-page document. It's one of the resources and main sources for my book. It's the standard. And then if I'm doing terraces and I want to refer to which the slope, I go to Brad Lancaster's book, which he asked me to review. And so I'm a reviewer on his latest edition, which is a total honor. But it's one of those books I do use and refer my students to using because he is so rigorous with the math. There's no one who has done a better job of the math of doing earthworks than Brad Lancaster's volume 2. So yeah, so I collect all these books and use them as references. There's a ton of permaculture books I do not own because they're just rehashing the same information. I figured this out when I was creating this book, and that's why I went back to Bill and went back to the original source materials. And then I started looking for all the new research that's been done over the past 30 years. And then just gardening, there's this incredible book called The Seed Garden. The Seed Garden. It's right there. I'm not going to get it because it's always disconcerting when I leave because I just get lost over there. Too many books. So The Seed Garden, I always refer to for specifics because people want. I mean, that's one of the books that at Baker Creek, when you call up, that's what they're flipping through to answer your questions. It's what all the seed companies are doing. We have reference manuals. And so that's the greatest reference manual for seed saving, for seed growing. So that's the best gardening book that I would say is out there. Superb. That's one of the books that and then there's the other one. I don't have it here. There's the older one. I can't remember its name right off the top of my head, but some people prefer it. It's black and white though, and doesn't have quite the same information. No, it looks like the Nourishing Traditions book, the yellow Nourishing Traditions book. It looks like that, but it's not that, and it's on seeds. I can't remember its name. Maybe someone in the comments will say it. But yeah, those are the books that I rely upon, and that's why I write books, because it actually clarifies my understanding and allows me to teach it at the highest level. So it's my shorthand. It's how I organize all the references. For regenerative soil, I've got an entire library of printed out information by category and subject that's hole punched and put into 3-ring binders, like old school. And they're all marked up, and I continuously add to them because, and so like I'm always doing that. But I always improve the reference so that I can organize my understanding and have that be a detail, or I pull everything out of that I need and then sum it up. I mean, like that's what I'm doing with all my books. I'm going through and I'm creating summative concepts that scale from micro to macro, that scale from small scale to large scale, so that they're universal truths. Like all climates, it stays. My slide's drying out. I'm sorry, guys. It's okay. We'll go back to this. Oh, never mind. It's okay. I'll just do this. And it'll jump back. All right. Next question. I think that Lucien, I'm asking you to unmute. Hop on here, bud.
I'm right here. I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Matt.
Cold.
I'm yeah, it's cold. It's it snowed a little bit. Lucian here. I'm so excited for all this beautiful thing. I'm actually I'm calling from the future. I'm living in the regenerative future.
Yeah, you
just
are.
So you all know, it's amazing here. Wanted to acknowledge you for being a big part of helping us create what we have with all of your knowledge sharing and courses and all that. So very practical, straight up questions. Besides farming, teaching permaculture here and consulting people in the community this year, because we're parents, we have a few of our graduates that are going to help us run a homeschool program here. So what do we have to do to use your book to, you know how I am. I'm always sending a message. Hey, Matt, is it okay if I communicate this, about you, or if I communicate this within your space? So how does that look like? That's one very particular question. And, just like maybe you could generalize if other people, what would it look like for other people to use your content to teach others?
Yeah. So this is stuff that I fair share, right? This is stuff that I've been teaching actually for about a decade, actually 12 years. So I did something with, Professor Lawrence Lessig. He was Girl Talk's lawyer. I had him talk to my students when I was a student teacher. I mean, this guy ran for president. This guy is world famous. He's like a man of honor in Brazil. And so he's an incredible guy. He's a Harvard law school professor, a Stanford law school professor. He ran for president as a referendum candidate to end campaign financing by corporations. And so I worked with him, and he explained all this to me years ago, how we can use things. And as teachers in public schools, you have a lot of leeway. You can copy like a lot of things as long as it's fair use. And so that means as long as you're using it for teaching purposes. So you can clip things, you can photocopy things, but it's all like sections. That's why you may have read a section out of a photocopied section out of a book or chapter, right? You may, and that's them exercising their fair use. So you may have also heard like LibriVox, right? LibriVox recordings. You have public domain readings of books, but then you all in between those two, you've got people who are quoting books all the time. So you can quote things. I've seen people say that like above a certain level, you can't quote out of like you can't like take a full page out of a book. I've seen people say that as a disclaimer, but I don't think you really can do that if you're actually teaching. So it's really about this, like if it fits the lesson with and then it's about how much you take. And then with like remix laws, like with like YouTube and such, which is what most of my kids were very concerned about because they were taking music videos and cutting them up. It's art, right? So art is its own kind of category and has a whole lot of fair use attached to it. And so there's that whole side to things. But if you're just going to use my book, people are already using it as their main textbook in colleges. People are using any book you bring up. People have been using it in private classes and groups. I think that using the videos from my course without permission, I've given permission to specific groups, people who are, there's no way they'll ever be able to pay for it. Groups that are in great need and stuff like that, where I've given them permission to use videos. And like the K through 12 programs everywhere. It's like everywhere. So I do that on a case-by-case basis because I like to track the effect and stay in contact. Also because it's like, if it doesn't work for you, I want to know why, you know what I mean, in your particular context or something like that. Hasn't been the case so far. But yeah, so basically, like for me and my content, my videos for my courses are for my students in my courses, but the books and then the lesson plans and then the teacher's guide are created so that people literally can take my stuff and go into classrooms, private workshops, universities. And that's why they're standards based. That's why they have teacher's guides with projects, lessons, it all laid out. I recently got someone asked, can they record themselves making an audiobook of my book? And I said, it's not public domain. And you can only do that if it's public domain, right? So, but you can use the book, you can assign reading from the book, you can read the book, you can quote from the book, you can be reading from the book in your class, you know what I mean? Like all the things that were normal that we did in high school with books, you can do. And then with the videos, I think I've got 70 of the videos from APSO on YouTube. So there's quite a lot of video out. I think I've got 600 videos on YouTube now. 100 of them may be private from this this conference though. But
Well,
but does that make sense? Does that feel right to you guys?
Add one more. Yeah, that feels amazing. You know, like I started the question like that, but I wanted to share something, not to butter you up or anything, but you know, I've been teaching one of the very few introduction to permaculture courses at the college level, you know, besides Andrew Millison. I'm not in California anymore, so I can't teach it there. But next semester, starting in fall. I'm going to teach that at University of Missouri, and they are reviewing your permaculture student book right now to see if that's going to be what they're purchasing. So,
Oh,
hopefully I get, I don't know, 5% or something for sure. But anyway, thank you for that.
because I
Yeah,
don't
it's
have
really
it in bulk,
beautiful.
my friend. The lion's share will go to Amazon. That's how it works.
I know, I know. Anyway, well, thank you for that. And again, we are very fair about how we use. We're all about sharing about others, and I do use your content as videos on YouTube, and inviting people to register for your course after they take mine. So it's like, if you really want to learn permaculture, it's like, what? So thank you, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really like what we do in that community. I think that there's that local PDC, that hands-on PDC, which you offer, that's absolutely incredibly valuable. But I think there's also something about that going to the nitty-gritty, deep, interconnected, holistic, long view. Hey, hey, buddy. I love it. But yeah, I feel like, and I also feel like seeing how different people do it. I mean, how many of my students have been into multiple PDCs? I've lost track at this point. Because we all learn different things from different people. All right, I'll unpin you. Too cute. I remember those days. They fall over in the snow. They can't get up. I grew up skiing. I started skiing when I was 2. I haven't been on snow and like skiing in like almost 20 years. It's like a deep. Anyway, can't talk about that. Question: is there a scholarship for the kids permaculture course? Homeschooling 4 kids on a low income. Information would be easily digestible for myself to teach them. Totally. Write me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com, and we'll work it out. I'm always here for teachers as well. You need resources, just write me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com. The fact that we live in a digital age makes it so that I really can help you, like instantly. You know what I mean? You found Unstoppable Enthusiasm. Abe Books highly recommended that secondhand bookstore. That's awesome. Thank you, Califia. Probably is less money, and you're rescuing it there too. I love rescuing books. I feel like, so like about like 10 years ago when there was like this crushing reality that people were like destroying books because books were no longer being used at a high rate any longer. Just drives me nuts. I can't handle it. So thank you. Saving books is an excellent way to go. Abe Books is great. There's another one like Abe Books. I got actually an Irish, ancient Irish farming book through Abe Books that was out of print, but referred to by Philip Callahan in his early research. It's an excellent book. Okay, what question? What kind of microscope should I start with? You can get the $200, $300 one. But you could get like the $80 attachment that goes into one of the eyes and comes out the USB and goes into the computer. You can totally do that. And then you can do that setup that I just did. It won't be HD. That's HD. That's a 4K camera going into a medical grade microscope. This thing, I won't even tell you the price, because then I'll be like, wait, Matt, you did that? So that's crazy. But I need it to just do, I need to be able to see a lot of different things. I've got the dark field, I've got epifluorescence, I've got the bright field. But I also have another microscope that's off camera. That's a $300 microscope. And I've got a camera for that as well. That's only $80 that gets the job done. So that's really a way to start, and that's new. So you could probably find a used one for $150, $200 on like Facebook Marketplace or something like Craigslist. So yeah, if it goes up to 400 or 1,000, if it goes beyond 1,000, they're pulling your leg. There's no resolution past 1,000. So what amoebas are most similar to the ability to take over a small biozone, like the movie Akira? Wow. You know, the first time I saw Akira, it was in French in 6th grade, and the French teacher had no idea what was about to happen. And he was like, this was recommended by a student, and like put it on. He was like, he goes, Sacre bleu, what is this? Yeah, he was so old. He said that. All you French folks are just saying right now, because that's something no one says any longer. And perhaps even then they didn't say it. So yeah, it was all sorts of awkward. But yeah, so what amoebas are the most similar to the ability to take over? I would say that the amoebas that don't have a shell, the amoebas that are clear, they're very hard to see. They move pretty slowly. They're very shy. They hide. So like we talked about earlier, there was a testate amoeba, right? Had a shell. But I'd also like to add a little bit to this, because there's a lot of new information coming out where there's lookalikes. There's things that look like amoebas that aren't amoebas. And so it's really important that we get to that next layer of testing and start developing more stains and protocols to differentiate things a little bit more. Just take nematodes, for instance. There's over 2 million different nematodes, right? Morphologically, you can identify them. But remember, there's beneficial nematodes, right? And the farmers are buying the beneficial nematodes. Well, let's learn about these beneficial nematodes for a moment. These beneficial nematodes exude a bacteria. Nothing to do with their mouth parts. They exude. So it's very specific to who they are, not their mouth parts and the morphological appearance. So we really are moving towards actual identification, and then mapping which feedstocks feed what endophytes, and then in succession, which saprophytes digest them, and then which endophytes and rhizospheric microbes eat them. Because it might be just back and forth, depending on the pH-EH. I mean, right, it might be tit for tat, you know what I mean? And then the saprophytes, and then the endophytes, and then there's like, it might just be that simple. So, but again, I want to know the families. I want to know the individuals. And I want to do those keyword searches for those certain microbes, because there's only a small 30-something list of the endophytes that are the key ones that I'm looking for. So, you know, like we can do this. This is not, you know, Sanskrit. It's like, we can do this. This is Command F. This is keyword search. What are your favorite archaeas? Ha 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 ha. Yeah, so archaeas have a different cell wall structure than bacteria, and for a long times they're archaea bacteria, and they thought they were bacteria. They are not bacteria. They're actually a different group altogether. So I would say that my favorite archaeas are the ones that live inside other microbes and help them digest. Because, you know, we have the gut biome with the fungi and the bacteria, and then microbes themselves, have their own digestive processes. So that's what I would say to that. Oh, there's students here from the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. Thank you for being here, guys. We actually took the week off so that we could all be here with you all. So thank you for being here. Next question. Matt, can you speak more to keeping the bigger picture in our endeavors and learning, keeping our minds open to different folks' ideas, even if you don't agree with everything that you mentioned the other day? Yeah. So, I mean, you guys notice people have different opinions and perspectives, and that's okay. Like we're all happy to be here. We may not all agree, and that's so good because the world is filled with people who don't quite agree. And actually, that's what we want. We don't want lockstep. We don't want homogenization. We want the subtle differences. We want, Elaine to be Elaine, John to be John. We want these people to give us what their unique journey is giving fruit, right? That's unique to them. And so I really find it incredibly valuable to have a lot of people with often different views. And so they're always my friends. That's the thing is my friends are from across the board, every board you want to find. I resonate and meet people and become quick friends with them from every walk of life, from all over the world. And we don't agree on everything. And I like that because that means I could learn something, or maybe there'll be opportunity that I could teach something and help them when it's right, when it works, when it's appropriate. But it's this richness to the world around me that I appreciate, rather than, what some of the TV wants us to act like, othering others, right? The Shakespearean classic theme of othering manifests itself well in this work. It's like, it feels like we're like acting out like something from English class that we all like wrote a paper on. So for me, I have a few different things. Maybe I'll grab them really quick. Let me just grab them. So this dovetails with what's in that book. So we talked about this book, and it's a huge part of it's, again, my reference and touchstone. So I refer to it, and I have printouts from it. Slightly embarrassing printouts because they're so old and beat up. But I've been using these every single day, multiple times a day for many years. And I think I'm just going to keep using them forever. And so I literally say I will honor those that I disagree with, even as I disagree with them, every single morning. Every single morning. That I'll honor those that I disagree with, even if I disagree with them. And so, and I also, I grew up in a family where everyone had an opinion, everyone argued, and I never was right. Of course, I was the third born. So yeah, I didn't have much that I could conceivably imagine that I could add to the table. So I just grew up in a context where I had to love people, regardless of how little or how much they valued me. And so, keeping the bigger picture in mind, I am a person that creates the things first. I see the reality before I live in it, and I create the future, and I'm living in the future I created. I remember when I first started getting into meditation, and I started sitting in front of water. I started sitting in front of a lake every single time. 2 months later, I was sitting in front of a lake meditating in that lake. It was wild. And, I am a person of faith. I really value that whole side of it. I'm a public school educator, so I always want to honor everyone's space in that area. And so I don't ever bring up, my personal beliefs in that area, because I want to make room for everyone else and facilitate everyone else in those areas. But I touch base with that every morning as well. It's core to the way I meditate. I do the Joe Dispenza meditation, but it is certainly a process that leads me up to a pinnacle moment where I pray. And then I wait and listen. So there's a lot of listening that I do, a lot of can drive people nuts in my family when I'm like, you must make it quiet. I must hear my mind, because I literally listen. Like when I'm making music, I'm like, quiet, like play the riff up until the moment where the chorus is going to happen, and then don't play anything. And the chorus will play in my head, and then we'll play it. It'll be fine. And that's literally how I do things. I wrote this book, and I wrote this book by listening. I literally wrote down the voice that read the words off in my head, and I wrote them down, and those are the books. So that's how I do everything. I used to be one of those kind of young men that tries to force everything, and man, was I unhappy. Try to make things happen, try to get things to come on, Woo. So yeah, no, I'm definitely a person that has to manage those things for myself. I've discovered that, like, over time, like, you come to know the why of yourself so well when you meditate that it's there's reasons why certain things become so private, I think, because you become so well aware of how you function and why you function that way. So yeah, I really feel like getting in touch every morning. I have right here, quick flash, my master list of goals. Yeah, I guess I can flash this in a meaningful way. Yeah, so, and I have lots of things in here, find land for purchase, include the boys, and it's setting up a family trust, so we can include them in it. Lots of goals, like make the site flood ready and water self-reliant, setting up packaging and drying shipping system for the seed company, set up compost inoculant systems in laboratory. I visualize these things. I see them in my mind because it makes them much more likely to come into reality. So, and it's not like the law of attraction. It's like in training your mind, and it's keeping you focused, and also releasing and addressing all the thoughts and concerns you have around that thing. Because in order to clear your mind, you have to walk through all those different things. So yeah, that's what I would say, Juliette. Thank you for the question. All right. Human urine, useful component in compost making. Do we know the worm's views? It's all about amounts, and it's about like fermenting it. So there's a certain amount. I mean, you have to just like compost it for a certain, ferment it for a certain amount of time, and then you can use it. But again, remember when people are like, oh, if you eat too many vitamins, you just pee it out. Well, your medication's peed out too. So, and then you know how you pH test your pee? Your pee has a pH. So there's an effect. So you have to take all that into mind. So it needs to be fermented for a bit. And then you need to understand what you're using and the effects and the amount that you're going to use so that it has the desired effect. Because you can use too much nitrogen, and nitrates are bad in too much amounts, too high amounts. What do you think of Heifer International, the nonprofit work? That's awesome. My dad contributed to them extensively for several years, I believe. Yeah, so that's where they and correct me if I'm wrong. That's where they give an animal to someone, and it helps them start an entire business and livelihood using that animal, like a goat and goat's milk, or a cow and milk. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that's something that my dad was actually involved in supporting years ago. So yeah, I support that. And the spirit of that is microloaning, I would say. That microloaning world that was referenced by Zach, I talk about in my book, The Advanced Permaculture. Well, the Permaculture Student 2. It's the book for the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. So yeah, micro lending really is the way that we're going to liberate so many people from poverty and allow so many people to be their own heroes and to have better lives than they ever could imagine. Who is better at seeing the spirits and fairies of the garden, you or your kiddos? That's so funny. Um, well, we never did the spirits and fairies things with our kids. Um, I always told the kids that the spirits and fairies were the microbes and the insects. And because we didn't have glasses then, and when you look at like some of these bugs, they look like little people if you don't like have, your glasses on sometimes. And so I think that they're just the bugs and the microbes, and those are the fairies and the spirits. They're the endophytic life that's inside, embodied in the plant that has a knowing, right? That sounds like a spirit to me. And so that's what I always told my kids. So I don't have that modality. My mom was a gardener, but she was she was very straightforward. She's a special ed master's degree teacher who created the helmet law, local politician when I was in 4th grade. So my mom's amazing. But that's not what she was there for me. Um, I was one of 4 boys. It was sports. It was get high grades or else, and line up. So yeah, it was a different kind of upbringing. All right. Looking for the next question. Some wonderful comments here. Thank you so much. I'm reading them all. Well, I'm scanning some of them because I'm looking for that the next question, but I'm definitely seeing such nice things and seeing you guys interact. So wonderful. All right. Yeah. Yeah. It was, so many of these places that had indigenous farming a generation ago, like Japan, um, it's very difficult to find that now. Masanobu Fukuoka's farm, there was a question for a long time whether it would be carried on. I think that one of his sons is carrying on some of it. I'm not sure if all of it. I think just the orchards maybe are being run that way. I don't know though. Question: I was planning to add limo to inoculate biochar we have made and then add it to our compost. Sounds awesome, as it is low in fungal numbers. Excellent move. Is there anything else you would that would help? Yeah, mycorrhizal inoculants, because you're simply adding yeasts and saprophytic digesters, and they're great for breaking down the compost. But when you get to the end of your compost and you're maturing it, before you use it, add all the biofertilizers, mycorrhizal biofertilizers, your rhizospheric, plant growth promoting, rhizobacteria, endophytes, all of them. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this has lists and charts. And so you're like, oh, well, I'm low in nitrogen. Well, have nitrogen fixers. I'm low in phosphorus. I have phosphorus solubilizers. Oh, you know, it's all in here, color coded, charted out, easy. How long would you need to leave it after inoculation to allow the fungi to take hold? Depends on which fungi we're talking about. If we're doing inoculants that are going to be mycorrhizal, they need roots. So they'll stay there, they'll hang out for quite some time, for many months, even up to a year. But and that makes sense because each season the mycorrhizal fungi is there. And as the plant dies and comes back, it's still there. So it makes sense that it persist. The heating is the issue. So, but the spores can survive the heating if you have spores in there. So I would say let it mature and then add the fungi that you want it to grow. And so I think that there's going to be there's going to be a huge realization that people don't want just fungi. Everyone's like fungi, bacteria, fungi, bacteria. It's like, yeah, which families are we talking about, buddy? It's like it could, because there's like saprophyte fungi and you give great numbers of those, sure, but that doesn't actually help my plant like a mycorrhizal fungi does, like an endophyte does. So I think that we're really going to see like a new day emerge from out of this, because the saprophytes are awesome, but they're not everything. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a giant inoculant industry that is way bigger than the compost industry in terms of like earning, like crazy. I mean, you talk about a little packet of inoculum, it's like $30 for some of these inoculums. And like, you know, cannabis growers are going crazy over this because it works. They switched years ago from compost teas to compost extracts. And then most of them are switching to biofertilizers now because it's much more predictable effects. So the individual microbes are seriously powerful because you know exactly what you get and you can calculate the numbers. You can do the concentration. And that's the other thing, is it's like not just to have a microbe and to have the diversity, it's the amounts. As we know, when we get sick, it's not that the virus was never there. The virus got to you because it was at a high enough concentration. So for effect to happen, that means there needs to be a high enough concentration. That's why the argument that all soils have everything works. But then again, it's like, but you can be deficient in something and have it still be there. So it's like really important to keep our thinking caps on with all this. So, yeah, so I would, so yeah, I would definitely look into arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi inoculants to add to that. Doing limo with biochar will totally help your fungal numbers, saprophyte numbers. And remember, the endophytic yeasts are saprophytic too. So there's that overlap between them. So that's totally legit. But again, it's not everyone, it's not everything. So just keep that in mind. If you want to raise your fungal numbers in a very meaningful way with very little added. And the reason why people are like doing little sprinkles of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, AMF, it's because it's just giant results, because the compost didn't have it. The soil bedding didn't have it. And meanwhile, arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi is responsible for a third of the world's carbon sequestration. In some places, it's up to 50% in the cold temperate. So it's really, really important. All right. We've been together an hour and 40 minutes. I'm going to have to take a break here soon, but we have a giveaway and a few more questions. Ramial wood chips with an M, Leanne. Ramial just means the twigs, just means the smaller branches. And they've got more nutrients in them, more nitrogen in them. So they break down easier and have more nutrients and more food for microbes. And they actually contain more microbes already. Awesome. Katie Van Gorder, thank you for being here. She says she wants to learn more about different fungi and their relationships too. Sign me up. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So and someone said, Matt, picture book for the current question. Yeah. So I'm going to make it into a picture book, the DNA testing, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the data, but then I'm going to show the slides, the microscope. I'm going to microscope assess it through bright field like Elaine, but also epifluorescence, also dark field. And so we're going to see not just who's there, but what they look like. And I think I might do supplemental like online video that like comes bundled with the Compost and Compost DNA sequencing book that I'm going to create, so that people can watch videos of these things. Because so much of this is like it's pattern literacy, straight up permaculture pattern literacy, straight up developing schema, just the way cognitive development works in all children. We just need to see it and recognize it to just start to encode that. Recommend what to look for in a good microscope. Yeah, so go up to 400 or 1,000. I love L&W. If you're a member of, well, last year, if you're a member of Regenerative Soil, you got a 40% discount on all the microscopes from L&W. And I've got to just work that out again before I start our season in March. But that's the plan, is to do that again. So my first microscope I got off Amazon, and it was a, what is it? It's an AM scope. AM scope goes up to 400 or to 1,000. 1,000's the limit. But yeah, you can get an AM scope for $200, $300 that goes up to 1,000, and you could do this. You get the camera, the AM scope camera for $80 that goes in one of the lenses, and that can go on a screen, and you can take pictures and videos, and avoid putting your eyes on the actual machine, because that's kind of the harder thing for me with the cheaper the cheaper machines, is when you're doing this work, it's really hard on the eye. And it makes it so that after a time, I just don't want to do it anymore. But with this setup, I get lost. I get addicted to it, and I just start doing it every day just for fun. And so I really value this setup, but with the video setup, and I really value the clarity, the 4K, like all this setup with this, totally awesome. But you can get everything done with the AM scope too. See Toby Hemingway's name mentioned. That's awesome. Miss Toby. All right, looking for some questions, looking for some final questions here. Which books would you like me to post? I mean, I can post my books if that's what you would like. In fact, I'll just send you to the website, Regenerative Soil Science. Yeah. All right. So this has courses, free courses, the book, quotes about the book. David Holmgren, co-founder of Permaculture, co-creator of the concept of permaculture, reviews it and says that's what he's going to be using for teaching farmers and gardeners alike. So It really is. It really is something else. I really appreciate the experience of creating that book. This book changed everything: how I see the entire world, how I eat, how I grow food, how I mean, the fact that, like, I talk to people like Mike Amaranthus, pioneer in mycorrhizal fungi, and Dr. Elaine Ingham, and all these people and everything. And none of them knew about redox was like such a big shock for me. But really understanding redox and how it is the almost all reactions in the world are redox, not pH based. Really just opened up the entire world to my understanding and made it so that I understood soil completely differently. So I really, really value all that. Question: what are the benefits and losses of the extreme hemp and cannabis growth for the environment? Yeah. So I can talk for a second about this. So the thing is, cannabis might have been the thing growing around the latrines. Why would I say that? Well, we were eating the seeds, right? I mean, we found hemp and cannabis like alongside like some of the earliest human sites. We've had it the whole time. That's why we have cannabinoid receptors in our bodies. Um, so we were like eating the seeds. It's as healthy. It's the most digestible protein for humans on Earth. Crazy, right? So there's all this deep connection with us. There's this history, I think, was growing around the latrines because it has no nitrogen ceiling. So what do I mean by that? You can keep giving it synthetic nitrogen till the cows come home and it will just keep getting bigger. And if you're growing it for biomass, and like sizes like what you go off of, luckily people are looking at terpenes. They're looking at all these profiles. They're doing testing. There's all these. Luckily, the biological way of farming and doing hemp and cannabis is getting the higher end products, not the chemical way of doing it. The biology is much more sophisticated, gets much better product. We're very lucky for that. But the hemp side of it, like in Canada, they're destroying the soil. It's not helping. They're not helping the soil with hemp up there. I got brought in to talk about this in specific and how to fix it 5 years ago, 6 years ago, from Joy Beckerman, the hemp expert. And so it's a really big problem because they're hungry, like crazy hungry plants. And we need to do things like I saw many people doing in California. You need to intercrop it. You need to have it part of a food forest. You can't have monocultures and expect to have a polycultural reaction unless you're adding in a ton of biology and organic matter regularly. So in other words, yeah, you could do a monocrop, but at what cost? How often are you going to have to replenish those microbes and nutrients and minerals? How much work are you going to have to do to keep it in line? It's easier to have more of a variety. And that's why people do things like have cover crops. And that's a type of crop rotation. Every winter they're putting something else on there, ideally a mix of things. And then bringing in the best possible compost, teas, extracts, bio-fertilizers, all those kinds of things are going to help. But the way they're doing it, it's really not good. So yeah, and this biodiversity doesn't have to be smashed up against. You can do a solid row of something. They figured out that just doing hedgerows around the field gives you all the beneficial insect like pressure from those insects, those native insects and everything. So it doesn't have to be smash up like cheek to cheek or anything like that. But rotating the rows, like every other row, you know what I mean? And like having like breaks, like in there really does make a significant difference. So people are putting in, trees and getting like increases in yields despite giving up space. It's because of that diversity, that interaction, that constant feeding of the soil ecology, and also because those places are usually still. So we need to think about all that. There needs to be areas that are undisturbed. There needs to be areas of diversity. And if we do monocultures, they need to be carefully monitored. And then you need to be replenishing that soil very regularly. And I mean, Elaine's done it, right? You guys have all heard that thing where she had tomatoes in South Africa, and they just did monoculture, just tomatoes, but she made it so they could do it every single year, every single season. But they've got to do their compost, you know what I mean? They've got to make sure their compost is right and re-adding it in, and their compost has to have all the nutrients that are missing from that soil going back in. All right. I think that is it. In your course, can we learn to use the microscope? Yes, I've got one of Elaine Ingham's students talking in my course about working with microscopes. Catherine Hinson, she's incredible. She stays with us for over an hour, introducing us to the microscope. But I'm also going to do a bonus course going through all the different types of microscope usages and demonstrating them and talking about them as an introduction and how to get you started, whether it's doing stains, whether it's doing epifluorescence, whether doing dark field or bright field, which is, of course, what Elaine Ingham is teaching. So, and I mean, right now, what I'm doing is I'm going through all the different protocols. As if you caught our conversation, Elaine and I talked to her about how it's like I can see the difference between her protocols and the current collegiate standards. I've got the books for the collegiate standards, and it's like she threw out all the chemicals and all the stains and just did it raw. It's amazing. But I mean, I don't even know how they arrived at that adding all those chemicals didn't change it. Yeah, I don't know how they arrived at that, but it does make sense that grad students wouldn't be trusted. Sorry, everyone in graduate school, forgive me. It's just, those professors are going to put like safety lines on everything they possibly can to prevent their research from getting screwed up by potentially any grad student that they get for that semester, right? So it makes sense that they would make things based around color coding and those kinds of things. So I'm going through that, and I'm actually double backing and reworking it all to prove to myself where that line really belongs, because the stains are actually totally different now. Like I said, you can dye your hair with stains. People are using it for anti-aging now. There's a lot of different stains that you'd be shocked. You're like, that's a stain? You're like hydrogen peroxide. Yeah, there are stains that are just normal, and people are using all the time. You can get so many of these stains off of Amazon. So it's really a new day. And I'm compiling all those as I'm going through and doing the DNA testing, and I'm going to create a introduction course that will be included in regenerative soil. So everyone in regenerative soil will come out of it and be able to use a microscope. Right now they can, but I want to do the epifluorescence. I want to do the dark field. We just showed bright field. It's just what one of Elaine's top students who started Sim Soil, the soil testing and analysis and compost testing and analysis company in California, very successful and incredible company, when Catherine was working for them. She's since moved on, and she's incredible. She's the powerhouse behind Sim Soil years ago when it was going. And And so she showcases, you know, what she learned from Elaine Ingham, also what she does now, after doing this professionally for several years. That's included in Regenerative Soil, and I'm going to include that introduction. But then I'm going to write a book about all this and create a full course on it. Regenerative Soil Microscopy. Because like I said, there's a lot of play there. There's the university way. There's Elaine's simplest, simplified way of doing all that, and grid counting and everything, which is a standard across like several disciplines and labs. And so I want to connect that to the DNA testing and have my final course that I do this year be all the DNA sequencing stuff I'm doing, how to around that. So I'm going to this year be expanding Regenerative Soil. I'm going to be adding an introduction to microscopy, but then I'm going to be creating an entire book and course around Regenerative Soil Microscopy. And I'll be having a book that showcases compost and compost tea from DNA and all those microscope perspectives through all the stages. Because that's the thing, folks haven't done that. Like I said, they showed the end product of just the bacteria. And then I've got the end product results of a few different composts. And they're kind of like this little piece. Like the Johnson Sioux had no arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. The Johnson Sioux had no nitrogen fixing bacteria, which means no endophytes, right? So it's like this information for me is incredibly important for me understanding the value and where to use these things. It's like that Johnson Sioux, that's going in the fungal duff underneath my fruit trees, right? It's going to help speed up the decomposition of the wood chips. That makes sense. But in a garden, I'm going to probably be leaning more towards stuff I can more tailor. Something that's like uses a Elaine Ingham compost tea as the base. And then I'm adding all my bio-fertilizers that I'm breeding on top of that right before I use it. And that's really what we're doing in Regenerative Soil. We're creating bio-fertilizers at home. We're learning how the bio-fertilizers partner together and create a synergy. Did you know that there are certain microbes that work together, certain bacteria and fungi that partner together? Yeah. So we are really close to serious breakthroughs in so many different ways. And for me, it's like I've read the literature. I know what people are seeing is true. They're doing most of these things on commercial farms or industrial scale testing or soil remediation sites. No one's doing this at the garden scale. No one's doing this with Elaine's compost, you know? So I want to show all these things. I want to showcase, you know, what's possible, what the limitations are, and what the future really is going to be. Because the fact that, you know, people are using light to read what's in the nutrients, what's the redox, what's the pH, what's the, you know, all of the above, the EC, the, you know, the salts, just with like light. It's like we're so close to such a revolution. The thing is, we're about to get such data that we're gonna have to sit back and digest the data. And it's going to cause all these new breakthroughs. And that's already happened with my book, Regenerative Soil. It's completely changed the way I view everything. But it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again when we get this download of information about the stages, because we may be doing hot compost teas. Like in the middle of when it's all hot, you may be doing like compost tea and then running that compost tea and letting it cool off as it's aerating, right? The microbes are like, we're thermophiles. But like, if they're in a water bath taken from that stage, that might give you something completely different. And you're like, oh, well, that's what I use for going, that's the special compost tea that we use in the goat pen. Takes away the stink. You know what I mean? There are very specific utilities to each and every single one of these microbes. And getting into this really opens up the door, because there are good Johnson soup piles. I never mean to badmouth David Johnson's work in any regard, or anyone's work in any regard. They're all providing us critical pieces to a much broader framework of understanding, is what the reality is. But that's why we need them. And then we need them to fight and defend their points, and then sometimes see why they're wrong, and then reformulate their ideas. And I mean, this is science. This is like, like the 1800s, where like people have their own labs, and they're like gentlemen scientists and gentlewomen scientists. Because I mean, there were a lot of women scientists in the 1800s. Believe me. The history books may not talk about it. They may not talk, they are there. YouTube's actually does a wonderful job of going back there and talking about them. But my point is that like they literally were like, well, I proved this in my lab. And then someone else is like, no, sir, I believe it. I will replicate. And then they like try to replicate it. And this is where we're at. It's hard to trust a lot of the things that are coming out of, the institutions that we once trusted. And I think a lot of people want these answers. That's why everything's becoming democratized, becoming miniature. I've got like a miniature PCR set up over there. I've got my miniature DNA sequencing kit in the fridge and freezer, because you can't let it thaw until you want to use it. These are things I learned. So yeah, I really appreciate you all being here. I appreciate your enthusiasm and excitement about all this, because this is what gets me going. This is what gets me excited. I want to know. I want to help people, and I want to understand why, because we can know. We can partner with these individual microbes. We have identified them. We've isolated them. We've found them in wild plants. We found them missing in our domestic plants. And then we started bringing these microbes in and seeing these plants suddenly have immunological functionings that we didn't realize that they had. And this has all happened in the past 10, 20 years. If you want to learn about it, Rhizosphere, this is the Rhizosphere book. This is an excellent book. Soil microbiology, ecology, and biochemistry. And probably one of the greatest books is Mineral Nutrition and Plant Disease. This is Don Huber, Wade Elmer, and Lawrence Datnoff. These three guys are awesome. Gotta actually have Don. I gotta write him back. So those are some great, deep technical books to dive in and sink your teeth into if you want to go extra deep. But there's just so much out there. There's so much new information, and it's all really exciting. So I just want to take a moment here to thank our sponsors, Fungi Perfecti. Thank you, Paul Stamets. Thank you, Lonnie over there. Lonnie is my contact over there. She is the best. Amacy Beauty, Antoinette, thank you so much. About and for Sustainability, Lucien. Fungi Freights, Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company, Guayaki Yerba Mate, Myco Uprising, Cognitive Function, Permaculture Magazine, Pharmacy, Rainbow, Blue Sky Biochar and Body Care, Catalyst Bioamendments, and Farming Secrets. They were the sponsors that provided for the digital goodie bags and the physical goodie bags, and for some of these giveaways. And they really, and some of them gave towards the shipping for your goodie bags. So it's really incredible. They've really helped me make all this possible, make all this fun, all this excitement, all this connection possible, so that we could reach this many people. We've reached almost 7,000 people in this week. I've never had an event this big online. And it's really exciting to see this as the start of 2022, because this is really a promise of what's to come. and of what's possible when we combine around positivity. And like many people point out, this is not the kind of positivity that is naive. This is not the kind of positivity that is fooling ourselves. This is the kind of positivity that realizes, yeah, I see the problems of the world. I see where people's heads are at. But if I let myself get down in the dumps, I will never be able to lift the people up around me. You can only lift, you can only lift where you stand. So you got to stand strong. You can't help people when you are slipping down that mountain. You got to be on higher ground. So I would say that this is the community. This is the place to find strength. And this is where I find my strength. I felt like I was alone for years, and then I felt so much relief with the friends and community I found in permaculture. And they're not all like me. We don't all agree, but we all care a lot about each other, care a lot about this work. I mean, every time I explain something to Javin Branakovich, it is like he is one of my older brothers in his reaction. And I value it because it's like one of my older brothers. And he's always worried that I'm doing something that might go badly and might go wrong. And I appreciate that. I really appreciate him. But that's the thing. It's that difference creates this edge that cultivates deeper questioning, gut checks, deeper discussion, explaining, and also deeper conviction. It's like, oh, well, we don't agree after all that discussion. And that's okay, because I do believe in this, and different stroke for different folks. And that kind of thing is so valuable. I believe that is the fabric of community. The respect for differences is the fabric of community and greatness in community. I think Makeda is such an awesome facilitator of that. Being able to like cut the wheat from the chaff, you know what I mean? Yeah, if you missed that, go back and watch that. She is one of closest family friends, and also such an incredible inspirational person. She's turning 80 this year. And so she's seen so much, and to see the way that she's approaching all these cultural things that are going on. She's like, no, bring everyone in. We're going to celebrate all the cultures, include everyone, and let everyone celebrate each other's cultures. Everyone can learn capoeira, the Brazilian martial art. My son learned that at the World Beat Center with them. How cool is that? To be included like that. Hear the stories of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, capoeira, excuse me. And to take that on board culturally, and to understand the history behind that, because it's a very serious and very important history around capoeira. And so yeah, I just value that so much. That's the fabric of community. That's the fabric of love. And so like that's why I have people that are all over the map. That's why I have people who have divergent opinions. That's why I have people that transcend all those differences and value each other, and are kind and supportive of each other, even in our differences. I love it. It's what it's all about. So thank you for being here. Thank you for making this what it is. Thank you for participating. It has been such an incredible week. And today we have an incredible giveaway. I'm giving away the introductory course to regenerative soil, a 30+ hour course. It's no joke. It's a big course. And I have it written down. It is, I might have to go back through. I might have to make that drum roll longer. Oh no, it's right here. I have it. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for being here, bringing your wonderful questions, bringing your enthusiasm and willingness to suspend that those negative thoughts, willing to table those doubts and those fears, say, hold on a second, let me wrap my mind around what these people are saying. Let me see what's really going on in the world. And then seeing how those fears, they're legitimate, but we have solutions. And marinating in that fear, instead of moving on, using it as an impetus, as a spur to going to take the action, that's the key. That's where the change begins. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. So Nina Henko, are you here, Nina? And do you already own this? I know many of my students are here. It seems like she's here. Congrats, Nina. Are you here? You won. Email me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com. I know it's so late there. Nina, it's so late there. You're in Germany, right? Am I right on that? If Nina is in Germany, it is very, yes, she is in Germany. She is a trooper. Everybody give a hand to Nina. It is the middle of the night over there. You deserve it. All right, so email me at matt@thepermaculturestudent.com. You won. I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Thank you so much, Nina, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We do have one final get together later tonight. For those of you who are getting goodie bags, the bonus course streaming of last year's Our Future and this Our Future and the downloads for this Our Future. If you're part of that group, which is the full package, we'll be getting together tonight at 8 o'clock. I know, Nina, this is like the middle of the night. I think it's 3 a.m. there for you, which means that it's like 1 a.m. right now for her, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, my word. You're amazing. Congratulations. And thank you for being here. But 8 o'clock tonight, Central Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, and 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be having a final Q&A, get together, meet up, mixer. We'll let people, talk about their work, talk about what inspires them. And we can talk about it. I wasn't planning even on recording it, so you can feel like comfortable coming on here on camera and everything if you're shy. But let's have some fun. Let's share what we're inspired by this week. Let's share what we're thinking about moving forward and what big projects and ideas we have percolating, because that's what it's really about, giving voice to that, giving place to that in our lives, and then taking those actions. Because as you can see, amazing things are just waiting to happen everywhere in the world. Nature is waiting to explode with abundance and regeneration and remediation, to take back the tempo, to take back the stage. And we are facilitators of that change. That's why we're here. I believe that's why we're born. I believe that's why we're human. We are facilitators for nature's greatness, for creation's splendor. That's us. And that's why I get excited, because I feel like, hey, I'm here to fix this problem. This is the reason I'm here. There's a problem. Well, that's why I'm here. You know what I mean? And we're here together. There's so many of us. That's the other thing. Every year, every month, there is more and more enthusiasm, more and more people involved, and more people in my communities, Regenerative Soil and the Advanced Permaculture Student Online. And it's those communities that keep growing. We don't lose anyone because it's lifetime access. And so they just keep growing, and people continue to grow and develop. That's why so many of them were speakers this year at Our Future. So that could be you someday. That could be you next year. You could start your own event and do that later this year. I know Diego Footer literally started Permaculture Voices very quickly. So you can do it. You just got to have that level of passion and that level of excitement that'll carry you there with that level of energy. Thank you so much. I'm Matt Powers. grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. Everybody, enjoy your dinner, and I'll see you a little bit later. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.